In today's episode, we're going to talk about how not to become part of the statistic of up to 90% of businesses fail out of the gate. With our guest today, Ken Beall, who successfully grew his company from 6 figures to 7 figures in the HVAC industry.
Too often we factor in market value.
Okay.
We focus on what's the market saying that I can charge for this rather than profitability.
He is going to address some of these key issues. Number one, know your numbers.
A lot of businesses start out, they have a plan, they have a purpose, they start doing business, and they never dig down deep into the numbers. What does this actually cost me to do business?
Number two, have the right culture for your company. If you don't have the right culture and you don't have the right team players, you're always going to be chasing your tail. So let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Kingdom Heirs, where faith meets business, inspiring the kingdom-minded entrepreneur. Today, we've got Ken Beall with us, and we're going to talk about why up to 90% of businesses fail. And we're going to cover the key indicators of business failure. Welcome back, Ken Beall.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Come on.
Always love it.
What I like about what we've got going on here is both of us are still run and operate business, and we're in the thrills of payroll, clients, customers, putting fires out.
You more than me.
And so thank you for being here.
Yes.
One of the goals that we had of Kingdom Heirs is to, as you might remember, Ken was on episode number 7. We got a little bit of his story, his background, his successes with business, and his expertise. And so now what I'd like to do is take time and really teach some basics of business that I really believe that our subscribers will be able to appreciate and apply to their business. Yes. So, up to 90% businesses fail. And I know you know a lot about business. So one of the questions I have to you is the key indicators of business failure. So what should we be looking for? What are those pitfalls?
Yes.
And how can a young entrepreneur or a new entrepreneur prevent failing out the gate?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, it's a great question. Obviously, it's a first things first type of question for me. And, one of the things I learned through really mistakes was, early on in business, I didn't know my numbers.
Okay.
So,
that's good.
So the numbers, what are the numbers? What are my true numbers? And a lot of businesses start out, they have a plan, they have a purpose, they start doing business, and they never dig down deep into the numbers. What does this actually cost me to do business? And I think this is a big issue, and it's certainly something that I struggled with early on, especially until I kind of began to notice some things. I'm working hard early on in my business. I'm working hard, running fast. A lot of sales, a lot of things happening, and then at the end of the month, there just wasn't that much money left. And it's like, you're doing all this, and what is it that I'm missing? And so I started asking myself those types of questions. What is it that I'm missing? As a young, untrained entrepreneur, what is it that I'm missing here?
Yeah.
And it really did boil back for me. The 90% truth was the numbers, understanding, actual cost of materials, actual cost of labor, how long it takes to do a job. Generally we have this internal bias that we're going to be able to do things cheaper and easier than what it actually comes out.
Yeah, very optimistic.
We have this optimistic bias, right?
So how did you answer that question? You said you asked yourself the question. I think most people start by asking themselves. But then a lot of times we don't actually have the answer. Because if we had the answer, we wouldn't be in that predicament.
Yeah, well, when you start asking yourself a question that you can't answer, it's time to look for somebody to ask the question to that has the answer.
So what did you do there?
Early on, I found a business coach.
Okay, business coach.
And I didn't invest a ton of money in a business coach. There was really a couple of questions that I needed answered. And so actually, and I'll just give some hard numbers. I found a business coach. I did some research and found somebody, and I basically paid them $7,000 for a year of their time.
Yeah.
These different meetings and whatnot, and really got the bulk of my questions answered within the first month.
That's good.
And then never talked to him again.
Was there any implementation? Did he give you any implementation tools?
Well, he did. He gave me some. He helped me with actual labor cost numbers. I had a service business, and so he helped me with that. And actually, he gave me a spreadsheet Those spreadsheets are readily available. They're around to be able to figure what your actual labor cost is. You know, for a service business, you've got a guy, he's in a truck, maybe a helper in that truck as well. What are the actual labor costs? And they were way higher than what I was calculating.
Were these guys hourly? Were they salary?
Yeah,
Were they
hourly.
Overtime? Like, how did you handle that? Did you say hold you at 40 hours? I mean, it's tricky.
Yeah. No, and if you don't even know your actual straight time costs, you'll never know your overtime cost, and that's whenever you'll create a big pit.
Correct.
And so once we started adjusting our numbers, we realized that our prices.
Because I love your voice.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to make sure you talk into that thing.
Yeah, we realized that our prices were just off.
Right. Okay.
And
so you did an adjustment.
We did.
Now you know what your true cost is. Then you said, look, we're below or we're missing the mark by 10, 15, 20%, 30%.
Yeah.
What was the very first thing you did to correct that?
I recalculated everything, dug into all the numbers, figured out where the profit began.
Where you make your money.
Where you make your money. Tried to find benchmarks for my particular business, and they are different for businesses.
Yes.
Where's the net profit of each job? Because if you're working a job and you don't have your numbers right, say you're losing 2% on every job, and you just don't know it.
Yeah.
And so when you at the end of the month you go, man, I need to make more sales. Well, you're actually hurting your business by making more sales.
Correct.
Because now you're losing 2% on every sale, and it's just a snowball effect.
So a lot of times I found it's inefficiencies. It's the lack of production on the job, or you get to a job site. You know, we're both in the home service industry. HVAC, remodeling, construction, and so forth. Yeah. So understanding that if you don't plan well, then you have to then so you show up to a job site and you don't have what you need.
Yep.
You have to turn around and try to go get it.
Yep.
So now you just lost the production time there.
It's multifaceted. It starts with knowing what the numbers are. Then it goes to knowing how many numbers you have on each job or project, and really being able to nail that down. And then then efficiency, proficiency comes in.
Okay, so being efficient and proficient.
Yes.
Efficient and proficient.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ishants.
So once you know the actual cost of your labor and your materials, one thing that I did was, when I knew what my material costs were, my hard costs, I would go ahead and put an overhead mark on that. I started with, when I first started in business, I started with 10%. Right, but I was young and I didn't think customers would allow it.
Right.
But then I went 20%, and then I met with another entrepreneur, and he says, James, I've been charging 30% for the past 30 years. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? He goes, because it covers your time, covers your insurance, covers your fuel, covers everything. It's all that's overhead, and I only had myself and a helper, and I had insurance, and I had tools, and I had obviously, but it wasn't a huge overhead like you had. You had big overhead,
yes,
but you were a much bigger operation than me, and so then I understood that if I ever want to get to the point of being an actual full company, then I need to start charging overhead now. Otherwise, I'll never build in and cover those inefficiencies. I'll never cover that.
Yeah, most guys put overhead as the last number in their lines. You need to have it as the first number.
It's the first number.
Yeah.
Every job has got 30%.
Yeah.
So if it's $100, you get $30 extra to cover.
That starts you at zero.
That's it. Now you're zero.
What a lot of guys do is they try to
versus negative.
Yes.
Versus negative.
Or ignoring. That's what a lot of folks do. Overhead, I can't be that much. I'm just going to leave it off the spreadsheet, and you just can't.
Then they become up to 90% of companies that fail.
Yeah.
Because they failed to plan for the expenses that they thought should just come out of their net.
And the lion's share of that, the lion's share of that 90% are startups. And that's first year or two. Those are crushed and dashed dreams.
That's
for people.
What that is. Yeah, that's what that is.
75% of all businesses that are around will eventually close for the wrong reasons. You know, and what a lot of people do with their numbers, once they get all their numbers kind of figured out, then to figure out what is my price per job, what is my process to figure out what that number should be.
Yeah.
And then too often we factor in market value.
Okay.
We focus on the market. What's the market saying that I can charge for this rather than profitability?
That's good.
You know, and so that causes a lot of businessmen, and certainly service providers to lower or slash prices to get jobs. Yeah,
but at that point, then they're immediately going out of business.
And there is times to do on the schedule for this week, but you'd love to have something for your guys to do so you don't just have to just pay them for nothing or them not get paid.
Yes.
Then those are those times, very unique times where you can come in and get aggressive with some pricing and change and grab a few jobs here and there.
You don't camp there.
You can't. And a lot of people, you know, the customer will often tell you things like, and I've heard this so many times, you charge too much. Well, there's absolutely no way the customer can know that.
That's right.
What they're actually saying is, I don't feel good having to pay you this much.
Okay, that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. The value added. So when people, I attribute this to going to like a steakhouse. You take your dinner, you take your family out to get a steak, and you may not do that often. That might be a once a year thing. It might be a once a month thing.
Yep.
And it's all about service, level of service. And so if we're taking them out and we have high expectations, it's nice fine dining. We know we're going to spend $100 to $200 for that meal, and so we're prepared. We want to have a great food, great friendly service.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so and then if the restaurant hits all of that, everything was perfect. When we sign that check and we know it's big, we feel good signing it, and there's the tip. But the reverse is true. If we go, we place our order. They didn't greet us well. Yeah. They messed up our orders. There's no friendliness, whatever it may be.
Right.
When we get that check, we're like, you charge too much, and you really get stingy on the tip, or you write one of those like little comments, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's to your point. If people say you charge too much, the value proposition, they didn't feel the love in the service you provided.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you too. One thing you never see happen at a restaurant like that is at the end of it, the customer negotiating the price with the restaurant.
Well said.
You don't do that at the doctor's office.
No.
Hey, Dr. So-and-so, you're charging too much for these x-rays.
That's right.
But in the service business, it's a built-in factor that you have to have.
Plan for.
So you always build value on the front end. It's harder on the back end when people are already frustrated.
Correct.
So you need to find ways to build value into what you're providing.
Yes.
And then it just is what it is.
Yes.
I heard a guy one time say something, and this doesn't always apply, but he said, if people are constantly giving you price complaints, what do you do? And the natural thing that people would say is you lower your prices.
Which is the wrong thing.
He said you actually raise your prices. You're getting complaints anyway. And you're not going to raise your prices for the sake of raising your prices. You want to, obviously, we're not talking about price gouging. We're not talking about overcharging for services.
We're talking about why businesses fail.
Yeah.
And number one thing is they don't charge the right dollar amount.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the confidence in the service they provide or the product they offer. They don't have the confidence level.
It's a fear-based leadership of your business.
It's fear-based.
Yeah.
So I think that was one thing that I know that I applied right away was, and I realized that other service leaders, in our community were charging overhead. I said, well, that's important.
Yep.
Then what I did was on the labor side, because it's very easy to break out parts and material, parts and labor. And on the labor side, I went ahead and I added overhead as well, because that created margin.
Well, yeah, employees create overhead.
They do. Yeah. And so when we would fulfill a project, whatever it is, let's say labor was $10,000 hard cost, and then I would add overhead. I'd add overhead and profit. And so at that point, you might try to add 30% to that. And what that does is it allows, so now that's my profit margin. I have my hard cost, which I know I'm going to have to pay all the guys to do the work, subcontractors or W-2s, and then you have office staff. Yeah. You have your team that you can't bill their hours out to a job site. But you need the accountant, you need the receptionist, you need the operations leader. And so when you start adding in overhead and profit on your line items, now you're planning for when you have a slow week. Now you're planning for when it's frozen outside and nobody wants any work done or whatever it may be.
And if you can consistently sell at that number, then it does offer you latitude at times to adjust, to grab jobs. You create a little bit more ability for you to be a little more agreeable when it comes to, the folks that maybe can't afford that thing, and you can actually create an opportunity to be a blessing.
Well, now you have profit in the tank. A lot of people think that when we did well on a job, and they say, "Oh wow, we did so good. We hit our mark. We hit the numbers." They all think that I just take all that money and throw it in my safe. Like, are you guys crazy? That's company money. What that is, the company has a savings account now. It's the rainy day fund. It's the investment fund. It's so that we can afford to pay you guys when we have 2 weeks of slow work during the holidays. We don't lay people off. We just keep them We find things for them to do. We reorganize our shop. We market, whatever it may be.
And in the long run, that's a great benefit to your customer.
Yes.
As well.
It is.
It is symbiotic.
And the point is because we're always there. We're not out of business. It's one of the things we've hired people in the past to do work at our home. And we're like, oh, let's hire them back because we had a great experience. And they're out of business.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, well, why? Well, because they didn't run it well.
Just because you're good at doing something doesn't mean you're going to have a profitable business.
Correct. That's exactly right. So the business coach helped you see what you needed to see. It was $7,000. But that $7,000 netted you what? What do you think it netted you?
It's immeasurable.
Yeah, I mean, even
right down to just the peace of mind of knowing that I could walk in and sell more confidently, lead more confidently, knowing that we were secure in our numbers. It wasn't scary to have more jobs. It was actually good to have more jobs.
Yeah.
And so it was just so necessary. You know, a lot of what I learned early on in the business, fortunately, the business that I purchased was small, but it had a good customer base that afforded me some latitude to make some mistakes. When on startup businesses, you don't have that.
That's right.
And so, you know, you've got to get some of this stuff in place earlier. Plan longer to start better, you know.
Plan longer to start better. What do you think it's, if people say, man, I don't have $7,000. What do you think that there's people that are out there that would like to, that, you know, like a business owner can call on to get some advice, or, you know, like, what do you recommend if someone says, look, things are just really tight, we're literally getting by the.
I'm gonna give you a secret on that one.
And
this is what I've done a couple of times. If you have a certain type of business in a certain type of area, you can, and you're struggling in certain areas, find a profitable, strong, healthy, bigger, larger business in another market, in another area of the country, another city.
State.
You can find them now. They're so easy to find on Facebook. Message the company, hey, I would love to just, you know, pick your brain, ask you a few questions. And you could start to create a network in that way. There's also networks already established for just about every type of business on Facebook, on different forums, obviously through podcasts and all this stuff. It's all there.
That's right.
And so what I've found is that guys that are successful have a big heart for small business.
Yes, of course, because they remember where they came from.
Absolutely. And I've done this with people. People have reached out to me that were much smaller than the business that I was running. I've reached out to other guys and watched other guys that were operating businesses that were 10, 15, 20 times the size of my business.
Yeah.
And you just pick up these subtle things. When something grabs you, you can reach out to these guys. I've even found that these guys will respond.
They do. Yeah,
they do. Even though they may have 17,000 people on their Facebook or whatever social media, the small guy that says, hey, I'm a small shop in Western Illinois that is really struggling in this area. Man, can you give me a piece of advice? Oftentimes, these guys will say, private message me your phone number and I'll call you.
I love that.
And so you can get just tons of free advice. Then oftentimes,
which has huge monetary value.
It's huge. And sometimes you can buy in monthly. I bought in monthly to one of these groups. You know, it was like $99 a month. And man, you can just ask all sorts of questions.
Yes.
Plus, you can watch a lot of information I would get was just by watching other people's questions.
Yes.
And this stuff would come up on my feed.
And it's related to what you do.
Yeah, and I would click on it and watch it so that Facebook would continue to feed me those things.
That's it.
You know?
Yeah.
And I would this guy would ask a question. I would see a question. It's like, man, I've been thinking about that. And I click on the answers and there's 70 answers.
I think
you invest the time in just wading through those. And if there's somebody that's you agree with or have a question for, just reach out and ask them.
I love that.
You know?
That's the whole thing. I know that Michaela and we made it to the top 500 remodeling contractors in the country.
Right.
We made the list. Something I always wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And you have to have certain criteria to hit. And in 2019, we hit it. Or 2020, we hit it. And so we wound up going to this gigantic conference and walking into the room with these other top 500 remodeling replacement contractors, like home-based contractors. Was a sense of like, wow.
Yeah.
And then
It's a humbling thing.
it's very, very humbling because in our market, we're kind of a big deal, right? And then you get into like with a room with these giants and you're like, oh, I'm a fly on the wall. What can I learn? What can I learn?
Yeah.
What can I learn? And the coolest thing is the humility, to your point. Most of these guys and gals started from zero and or acquired a small business, a small company and grew it.
Right.
But, we were sitting with guys that were doing 500 million.
Yeah.
Kitchens and baths.
Yeah.
Windows. I mean, these companies were gigantic.
I read a statistic that 88% of all millionaires are business owners that started from nothing.
That's right.
88%.
That's it.
And so that's
a lot of room for us.
Yeah.
To get somewhere.
Yeah. And so these guys, these are the guys that are moving America.
That's true.
They really are.
That's the backbone of America, small business.
Small businesses.
That's it.
And then there's millions and millions of others that never even reach $1 million, but have a business that supports their family.
That's it.
The business
Which
that I
is beautiful.
purchased, when I purchased the business in 2008, their biggest year was $249,000 in revenue.
Yeah, that
was their biggest year.
That's big.
But this couple lived very well.
Of course they did.
For 30 years.
Yes.
Based on just that amount of revenue.
I love that.
And so
owner-operators. We call them owner-operators.
Yep.
They
had
make
no
good
employees.
lifestyles for themselves. And that's what so many people, I was an owner-operator for a long time until I had somebody come up to me and say, James, why haven't you scaled your business? Another very successful business owner in town. Yeah. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm living very well. He goes, I know you are. He goes, but you have capacity to scale your business. Why haven't you scaled it? And I said, well, I can tell you it's because I'm afraid. Yeah. I'm afraid that if
it's losing control.
That's exactly. I said, it was a control. I said, I'll lose control if I bring more people in. Then how can I control the outcome? He goes, you'll figure that out. He goes, time for you to hang up your tool belt. He goes, and at that point, then you become the business owner versus the operator. Yeah. And it was very, very stressful, extremely, very stressful hanging up your tools. Yeah. And
then occasionally you get to pick them up for fun.
Oh, that's the fun part. Yeah, I still love to do that. So but in that, to the point though, it came to the next point is hiring the right people. And something that I know very well, and I know you do this well, is one of the greatest mistakes that business owners, small business owners, or just business owners is hiring the wrong people and then taking too long to find a replacement. Yeah, yeah. And I think that is a number one thing that just people are plagued with. Man, I hired this guy because I had a need, or it was a problem. Like I needed someone. I needed a warm body. But it was the wrong guy or gal. Yeah. And now what do I do?
Yeah. Well, I'll speak to the parting company with employees. Sure. Generally, what I've found is when that happens, 90% of the time, or even higher than that, it's a relief for both parties.
That's true.
If I'm working as a worker in the wrong company, or the wrong vibe, the wrong culture that I don't fit into at all, it's painful for me.
Well, you'll know that.
And I'm less productive, and so they don't always. The employee won't always believe that initially, but ultimately it's a benefit for both. Yes. And so those are things that, as long as and there's some things you got to make sure that you've done before that. You got to make sure that you've created clear expectations.
That's key. Yeah.
Yeah. That there's clear ramifications of unmet expectations.
Yes. Cause and effect.
There's proper training, so that the people can be as proficient as possible in the business.
That's good.
When that happens, when employees are proficient, clearly understand the boundaries, clearly understand all that, and fit into the culture, it's the best thing ever. It's like the easiest thing to lead that employee.
Yes, it is.
And when it's not, the exact opposite is true. It's just like gravel in your shoe.
That's right. Sandpaper. Yeah. Constant sandpaper.
Yeah, and it's just not. It's not fun for either party.
I think to the point when we both know, when we know in our leadership role, when we know that we've got someone who's not performing, we've trained, we've had the conversations. We show them the target. We even help direct the arrow. This is how you stand, and this is how you shoot it. And every time they hit the ground, at some point, now we're carrying that weight and that burden on our minds, and the team all experiences it as well. Yep. And so underperforming people in your organization will kill morale. Yeah. And we had talked about this prior as well, is if people have kind of like a sickness in that they're like negative everything's negative. Woe is me. It's really hard to work with. Team members don't like that because they're trying to remain positive because they're trying to overcome challenges. So I think identifying that in your organization early, regardless of what company you're in, that needs to be identified early, and don't, pray it out, think it out, talk it out. And at that point,
I'll go back even further.
Make a decision.
Yeah, I'll go back further than that. It's creating a culture intentionally early on.
This is good.
So many times what I experienced is that, if you have, it's like it's the way the body works. The body, if it senses a cancer or a foreign thing in the body, it comes around that and tries to remove it.
Yes.
And if you've created a good culture in your company, you'll find that starts to happen. It's easier to pinpoint those people because the rest of the organization is sort of pushing against them.
Yes.
To try to push them out.
Yes.
And it's just a natural thing.
Yes, it is. Yep.
And so
that's good.
Our responsibility at that point is to see that, determine that. And that's why it speaks to you hanging up the tool belt. You'll never be able to adequately watch those things and see those things unfold in your organization if you're constantly in the weeds, out in the field,
you have to be high
doing
level.
that thing.
Because then you have because you also have emotional connection at that point.
And you'll never be able to see people weakening in those areas where they may have the chance to build them up.
That's right.
Some of the best employees I've ever had were people that early on we had issues.
Yes, because you worked through it.
And we worked through it, and it was that person was coachable, that person was willing. I or the management team took the time to invest in that person and to try to get on the same page. And when that happens, it's like trial by fire. It's like we've been through something together now, and it strengthens that relationship.
I love that.
Because it's relational. As Christian owners, I don't even think the Bible allows us to operate a business outside of a relational dynamic.
Great point.
And so
it's more than transactional.
Yeah,
it can't be transactional.
Right.
It's
and
relational.
It may be a gifting you have. It may not be a gifting you
That's
have.
right.
If it's not a gifting you have to be able to kind of think relationally like that, then that's something you probably need to develop.
Yeah.
So that you can. And I'm not talking about being best buddies with your employees.
And you can't be.
Yeah.
You can be relational.
You can be relational. You can be friendly. You can even be friends.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able to create at least some element, certainly in service businesses, blue collar businesses, especially,
workers,
which is, I can't speak to too many other things other than a blue collar business.
We get it. Yeah, we get it.
And so it just allows all of that. And so it all kind of works together. If you've got the numbers right and you've got the people right and you've got your heart right, it's a perfect combination to be able to give you the best opportunity to be successful.
That's good.
And then it's just then hard work matters. If you've got all that other stuff wrong, hard work,
it doesn't matter.
You feel like you're chasing the wind,
constantly chasing your tail.
And you go to bed every night discouraged, apprehensive about what tomorrow may bring.
Right now, you're talking to a lot of people right now.
Yeah,
like, now what do I do?
You're in fear. What do I do? And then we make bad judgments based out of fear, and that's whenever we may think, man, this isn't working. I need to diversify.
Okay, this brings me to my third point. When should you diversify? When you should not diversify?
Yeah.
I think to your point. Diversification within a company, and in other words, like talking about different markets. Hey, I should expand. Things are going good here. There, somebody says, "Hey, I should get over there. Should I move? Should I do that? Should I expand that market?" What's your opinion? What's your advice on that?
There's no formula for that. I mean, there's literally no formula. What I will say is there's some things that, and obviously, I think you would do yourself justice to get in front of somebody that's done that and been there.
Goes back to the coach.
Right. It goes back to that coaching, some sort of coaching input, whether it's paid for or given freely. They're both valuable.
That's right. Yes.
And so there's no formula for that. I know that I don't know what the formula is, but I learned from firsthand experience,
what's your experience?
What the formula isn't. And it's not, and it's not for the wrong reasons. It's you can't do it just because you're saying I can make more money to do this.
Yeah, money can't be the sole motivator.
It cannot.
It'll also be what crushes you.
And small business, sole entrepreneurship, and smaller LLCs that have like a main owner and maybe a small management team or no management team.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do that. And that's what we tried to do in my organization, and it was really a huge strain on the organization. And it comes back down to the same way you start a business.
Yeah, that's good.
You've got to have all those same elements involved in that for diversifying a business as you do for starting a business. The numbers have to be there. You have to do some market studies. You have to realize what it is you're doing. The places that I've seen the greatest success in this is through maybe these private equity firms, which now are really active in buying up small businesses and certainly blue collar businesses and trade businesses.
They want to, if they can retain the operators for a season, that almost secures the deal.
Even if they don't, they know how to hire those positions.
They'll bring in the right managers.
And they have the systems and processes already in place that they're probably doing elsewhere.
That's right.
That they can just move over here.
That's right.
And so those guys can do it, you know. And what I found in us is it diffused our effectiveness in both areas to try to bring in another direction into our business.
That's good.
And so it was a pull on time, energy, and all of that adds up to exponential resources that begin to be pulled into this non-profitable aspect of our business.
So this it makes me think, it reminds me that, you know, when we're feeling like, it goes back to, I think, knowing your numbers. I feel like, man, I just feel like we're not hitting the numbers that we should hit. In their brain, well, maybe if I go to a different market, maybe I'll do better. So, hey, let's go to this bigger city. We're in a smaller city. Let's go to the bigger city and see if we can't.
It's a fear-based decision.
It's fear-based decision. What would be better is hone in on your numbers, hyper-focus on your market, know what product that you offer that you make the most amount of profit on, and maybe focus on that and become a specialist in that area.
Be better in your particular market that you're already in and have a market share in, and begin to work to find ways to grab a little bit more of that market share in that area.
Knowing what services you offer, what products you offer that don't perform well, stop offering them and just focus
or adjust your prices for those.
That's good. It's a great point. Or adjust your prices and or find what you do really well on. Like what your team might just do really good at in and outs.
Yep.
You know, we're really good just service calls. We don't want to do new installs. We just want to do service calls because we can do 15 of those a day. We bring in $300 a service call. You know, now we're doing really, really good.
It's measurable.
Versus
predictable, somewhat predictable.
Some guys get very excited about the big number. Hey, that's a $10,000. That's a $20,000. And we can make $5,000. Yeah, but it took you 3 days. But if you just went back to your service calls, you're crushing it on service calls. Well, that one took you 3 days. And now you got tied up with callbacks because there's an issue. There's little things here and there. I'm just saying that there's ways to de-stress. Sometimes you got to slow it down so that you can pick up speed again. Right? Versus adding more to the plate.
Backwards to go forwards.
That's right. Ken? Thanks for showing up today. Thanks for sewing in some nuggets of truth for us.
Yes.
Will you come back and do this again?
I will.
Good.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Hey guys, in summary, I think today what we just covered is the key indicators of business failure. And we talked about why up to 90% of businesses fail. It's the big thing is knowing your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know where you're going. So know your numbers. You really want to break it down, go right down from your material cost to your labor costs, add the overhead, add the profit. And then when your client says it's just too much, go right back to the value statement. This is what we're here to do for you. We delivered it. We executed. And thank you so much for trusting us. And in the future, you can trust us again. Another thing you might look at again is bringing in the right people. Make sure you hire the right team members. Okay, set the expectations, make sure you get them trained, and remember, you're hiring for your culture. So create a good, healthy culture that's relational based. Third thing, don't over diversify. Don't overdo it. Don't try to go into extra markets. Stay focused in your market and know what you're really good at and continue to do that and then scale from there. So thanks again. If you liked what you heard with Kingdom Heirs, please like, subscribe, and ring that bell, and hit us in the comments down below. We'll see you next time. God bless you guys.